We're with Suzanne Fallender from Intel, the Director of Corporate Responsibility based in Tampa, Arizona. Hello, Suzanne.
Hi, how are you?
A pleasure to meet you, although it's sort of, our times, e-meeting, but at one time we'll meet hopefully in Israel as well.
Absolutely.
So, Suzanne, sort of, this is, we're calling the whole session in a way ESG in a new normal. We're all living in a new normal kind of situation. And I was wondering what's sort of your take on the new normal ESG wise?
No, yeah, thank you. And really happy to be here with you today. I think that the new normal has been developing for quite a few years. I think it's been interesting to see how ESG has been evolving in terms of discussions that companies have been having with their investors, their customers, employees, also governments. But I think if we look back at the last 18 months, and especially the last 6 months, there's really been a dramatic increase in the focus on these issues, globally, I think, and certainly here in Israel as well. I think what we've been seeing from Intel's perspective is, also related to the ESG discussions, is that increased expectation from stakeholders for how companies should be both communicating, managing, and integrating this work across the company, and really thinking about, how does it connect to value. And so that's what we've been looking at as we've been reimagining our strategy for the next decade. We recently launched our new 2030 goals in May, and really at the heart of that has been kind of this new normal expectation in terms of how our investors, customers, employees, and governments and communities are part of our strategy.
And do you see sort of, let's look at investors, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
We also feel and hear that there's much more talk about ESG. The expectations are more connected to the business, to questions on resilience, of business continuity. Do you sort of feel and see the same thing?
Yeah, we've been doing proactive outreach and reporting for investors for over 2 decades now. And through that, we've really been able to see how this has been developing as a priority. We every year do outreach with our investors through group meetings on ESG topics, where we bring experts from different areas such as supply chain responsibility, environmental sustainability, diversity, inclusion, and meet and really hear that two-way dialogue back and forth with our investors. We also do one-on-one meetings with some of our other executives to hear directly from investors, so we can feed that back to our board of directors. A key part of the investor outreach and what we've been seeing also is this focus on transparency, metrics, measurement, disclosure, and really understanding the management systems behind the corporate responsibility and sustainability work. So we've been doing, reporting. Our first voluntary report was back in 1994, so many years ago. But over the last 2 decades or more, we've been continuing to expand our annual corporate responsibility report, but also integrate it into our annual report and other investor communications. And importantly, and we always talk about global and local issues, we also localize our corporate responsibility report for our local stakeholders in many of the countries, including here in Israel.
Yes, and that's definitely, by the way, a very important step, I think, in terms of also engaging with local stakeholders. So ESG is on the rise, and we'll come back maybe in a second to discuss other aspects of ESG. But there's an interesting point about Intel. That was one of the few companies, one of the few global companies that were actually, in a way, readier than others to sort of meet the pandemic. How was it? I mean, what did you do? What did you do different from other companies who sort of find themselves in a new reality all of a sudden?
Well, I don't know if any company was, including us, that plans for every outcome was really ready for all the change and complete change of our new normal in the world. But one thing that we really do pride ourselves at Intel is very process driven, having the right management processes in place, doing kind of, planning for different scenarios, and really having that expertise, across the globe in areas like health and safety and risk management, and our global supply chain teams looking at, how do we make sure we can always, deliver for our customers. So we actually had a pandemic leadership team in place for 15 years, really since the last time Intel had faced pandemics that impacted some of our communities and our operations. So having that process in place, having that team in place with that expertise and that history really helped us as we began to navigate through the COVID response, really positioned us well to be flexible, to understand, what things we would need to do at a global level, what different things we need to do at different community levels, and how we could drive sharing of best practices across our different teams. Of course, from the very beginning, the first and most important thing, and it's a core part of Intel's culture and values, has been the health and safety of our employees, both for those continuing to work on site to keep the factories running so that we could continue to deliver for our customers. Intel technology is used in, I think, about 95% of the digital infrastructure. So we also knew we had to deliver it for customers who were, supplying, healthcare solutions and responses for the COVID response, as well as for all of the people who were needing to connect to do learning and working from home. But we also supported our employees. 90% of our employees are now working remotely, so making sure we could help transition and provide the right additional benefits, flexibility, support, for employees as well. So I think it's the key learning for us has been, something we've always said at Intel is continue to adapt and learn and move and change, but really, never be satisfied that we've maybe got it all right, to continue to navigate the changes as they come.
Yeah, that's really, I think, a lesson that we should all learn. I mean, there's this adaptiveness, but at the same time, there are anchors like, as you've mentioned, a pandemic leadership team. That sounds like the right thing to have once you meet such a crisis. You've mentioned resilience, and I think it's much talked about. There's the question of business continuity. What would you say that the role of a CSR officer is, either direct or supportive in managing resilience and business continuity, after all those months?
Yeah, I think the first thing really just starts with people that we were just talking about. So, and it's not just people in your own operations, certainly that's important, but thinking about your business partners, thinking about your suppliers, the people who work for your suppliers, the people in the communities who are a key local stakeholder. So when we think about our corporate responsibility strategy more generally, I think we started with what needs that our stakeholders had, how do we help support them, what learnings could we share with them. That was especially true with our global supply chain team of, maybe many of them were smaller companies, maybe didn't have a pandemic leadership team. So what could we do throughout that process to really help? We have an entire global supply chain team that focuses on corporate responsibility and sustainability. So having them look to also make sure that in this pandemic, that we didn't let up on the expectations for preventing, concerns with safety or labor relations or environmental requirements during the pandemic. So I think it's that continued focus. One thing that I think when I think about resilience, and also, I think when I think about our employees, is how they really came together to find specific solutions to help our local communities be resilient. So in addition to, we donated personal protective equipment, 1 million pieces of equipment for our local communities. We also donated dollars, and all of our employees would donate dollars, and then we did matching for those. And then also they used their skills and experience. So we had many examples of employees coming together to do innovative technology solutions that would help our communities. There was one of my favorite stories actually is from Israel. It was a group of engineers who developed a pretty simple technology solution to help elderly people in the community be able to connect to their families over video during Passover by being able to just hit one button. As you can imagine, it's sometimes hard to know how to get connected, and if you're not familiar with any of the platforms we're using today. But I think that was just really, they came together quickly, and just seeing in the videos from some of the people who received that solution, just the tears and just being able to really kind of share in the family traditions like they wouldn't be able to without that technology. I just love that.
Yes, it is a wonderful example, and I think it's taking technology and making the adaptation that it will work with those who are not necessarily that, doesn't need that most advanced technology, but need the basic sort of communication that it can enable. You've also talked, I think, about an ecosystem that the CSR, from a CSR perspective, is quite sort of apparent. I absolutely agree that the question about the smaller suppliers who are not necessarily that well informed like large corporations, there's the questions of employees having that sense of meaning. And again, you've mentioned giving to the community, and I think it is, we all probably know that one of the greatest gift is actually to give to others. So wrapping up, and let's bring sort of purpose and meaning to the conversations. What is your sort of, what are your insights on meaning and purpose after all those months dealing with COVID?
Yeah, I think, for me, I think it comes back down to, Intel's purpose is to create world-changing technology that enriches the lives of every person on Earth. And I think what we've just experienced, both personally, but also our global teams that have been, working, on all the different aspects we just talked about, is really how important our purpose is in this moment in time. And a lot of our purpose is not just about ourselves and what we can do, but when we launched our new 2030 goals, which is anchored in our purpose, we really did set out that this is about how do we work with others and how do we increase the level of collaboration to address the challenges that really are, more complex, more interconnected, and more challenging, and requiring urgent action than ever before. So a lot of what we've been talking about related to our purpose is how do we drive that system level change, and how do we take the expertise of our employees, the technology that we provide, and apply it in new ways to accelerate progress on issues like health and safety, inclusion and access, and climate change. And so I think for me, the purpose is becoming more important than ever. And how does that tie back to, the strategy of the company and the work that we do? And anecdotally, as everyone is struggling with balancing all the needs at the family level, and needing to continue to work in new ways, I think everyone is looking for more meaning at this time. And so to the extent to which the corporate responsibility, as we integrate it into our strategy, they're hearing it from our CEO and our senior leaders of why this is so important, and how we can really have a bigger impact moving forward. I think I think it's key to how do you engage and attract and retain the talent you have. And once you, if I think about Intel, once we can do that with our 100,000 plus employees around the world, then that's really when corporate responsibility achieves its promise.
Fantastic. I couldn't agree more. And I think this is a time that definitely calls on that sense of inner purpose and that sense of engagement and connectedness, and if you feel purpose in your work and the way that you described it is definitely something that makes us more resilient, both as individuals and as companies. Suzanne, that has been a fascinating conversation, and thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And there's there's more, by the way, on the Intel's 2030 strategy and its Israeli manifestation adaptation on the channel as well. The session that we did with Intel, and obviously you can sort of view and watch more on those topics. So thank you very much, Suzanne and Intel, and we'll keep in touch.
That's great. Thank you.